I'm here with attorney Rod Sullivan, who is also an author, and he's here to discuss his latest book. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Karen.
Tell us about your book, what the title of it is, and how you got fixated on doing this.
Well, first of all, the title is The Wedding Album of Roosevelt, 1904. And basically how it came about originally is I acquired a wedding album from the wedding of Helen Roosevelt Robinson and Douglas Robinson from 1904.
Okay, and we happen to have that with us. Voila, and we're going to take a shot of it. This is it, and you can see this is really old. This is a big-time antique.
Exactly.
And inside the wedding album, and we have his...
Right. Well, the guest of honor was, of course, Theodore Roosevelt, who was then the President of the United States. He was at the height of his popularity. But there are also all of these people who were involved with Theodore Roosevelt throughout his life, who made him successful. You know, there's that old saying about behind every great man, there's a great woman. That's particularly true in the case of Theodore Roosevelt, because without the women that were around him, he would not have become the president and the great man that he was. Well, they're all in this book, including his wife, Edith Roosevelt, his sisters, Mamie and Coney Roosevelt, and the rest of his family. The other interesting thing about this, though, is that it was at this wedding that Franklin Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt announced their engagement. And so this was sort of their coming out party. They're both in the wedding. Franklin Roosevelt is an usher at the wedding. Eleanor Roosevelt is in the wedding party, and this is when they start becoming, you know, a couple. They're going to get married about a year after this. So the book traces from 1904, when this wedding took place, to 1918, when Theodore Roosevelt passes away. And you think about what happened during that period of time. Theodore went from the most popular president in the United States at that time to being sort of a pariah. And Franklin Roosevelt, at the same time, goes from being a young Harvard Law School graduate up through becoming Assistant Secretary of the Navy. And at the very end of this period, Eleanor Roosevelt finds out that Franklin Roosevelt has not only been unfaithful to him, but is in love with another woman, and finds his love letters.
The drama.
Yes, so there's drama during this whole 12-year period. So, which is why I thought it would make a great book. You know, this very same weekend that this wedding took place, the worst disaster in the history of New York City before 9/11 occurred. A ship called the General Slocum sunk on the way from Manhattan to a picnic. And this plays into the book because one of the people who lost his fiancée in that was the later person who attempted to assassinate Theodore Roosevelt, walked up to him and shot him in the chest, and Roosevelt survived. So there are all these interlocking lives that all come together in this group of people who are at the wedding.
Okay. Tell us how you became interested in this and what your personal connection to this legacy is.
Well, my grandmother was a school teacher, and as a child she would take me, or she did take me, to Sagamore Hill, which is Theodore Roosevelt's home on Long Island. And she's very tiny, and we would go with the Park Service officer, and we get to the bathroom, and she would say to the guy who was giving the tour, "Do you know who put the plumbing in here?" And the poor Park Service guy would say, "I have no idea, ma'am." And he'd say, "My grandfather, or my father, his grandfather put the plumbing." And
so this was your grandfather, her father, and she felt like she was proud.
She had a connection to the plumbing in Sagamore Hill, which led into a family interest in Theodore Roosevelt.
I gotcha. So you've been hearing about this since you were a little boy.
Exactly. And I've actually been collecting Roosevelt documents and reading about Theodore Roosevelt my entire life. And it just came time in my life to take all of that information and put it out on the page as a book for other people to see.
Okay. And the book, if you're interested, is right here. There's a copy of what the cover looks like.
Right.
Now, the book is not yet available, but this would be a fantastic gift for a Christmas present for maybe somebody's grandfather or father, because it's going to be out when Christmas of next year?
Yeah, there's such a long lead time between when a publisher accepts a book and when it's actually available that the goal is to have this available for you to give to your father, your brother, your grandfather, whatever it may be, for Christmas of 2018.
Okay.
So if you're in the bookstore prior to Christmas 2018 and you see this, say, "Hey, I remember Look Local," and I'm going to go out and buy that book.
I know you're going to come back and talk about it before then anyway.
I will.
Is there any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I just think I want to reiterate the fact that while most Theodore Roosevelt books and Franklin Roosevelt's are about the men and their accomplishments, this book is very much about the women who made them successful.
Okay. And, you know, like we always say, but behind every strong man is a stronger woman. And you say that's true, right?
And in Theodore Roosevelt's case, that's particularly true.
All right. Rod Sullivan, thank you very much. Oh, don't forget the special. This is for anybody that's watching right now. You can begin reading the book because you're going to be able to download a free chapter by going to Prof Change. Is that right?
Yeah, profchange.com has a free chapter plus photographs and a description of the book on it. So take a look.
We'll definitely do that. All right, Rod Sullivan, thanks again for coming in.
Thank you, Karen.
You bet.